Stephen Ricks. Dr. Stephen Ricks was born in Berkeley, California, and he completed his BA in Ancient Greek and MA in Classics at Brigham Young University, received a PhD in Ancient Near Eastern Religions from the University of California, Berkeley, and then the Graduate Theological Union. He spent 2 years studying at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. He's now professor of Hebrew and cognate learning at Brigham Young University, where he's been a member of the faculty for nearly 30 years. From 1988 to 1991, he was president of the Foundation for Ancient Research and Mormon Studies. That's the organization formerly known as FARMS. It is now known as the Neal A. Maxwell Institute for Religious Scholarship. There's more you can read about his many credentials in your program. With that, I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Stephen Ricks.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased, by the way, that my wife was persuaded to speak, and delighted that she was able to speak this morning. I'm going to be talking today about proper names in the Book of Mormon. A group of interested individuals have joined who are affiliated with the Maxwell Institute to work on the approximately 330 proper names that are to be found in the Book of Mormon. This study group, which includes individuals who are specialists in Hebrew, Semitics, and the Mesopotamian languages, and in Egyptian, in order to study proper names there. The fact is we have several. Among those that are participating, John Gee, Paul Hoskinson, Bob Smith, and myself. We have 3 specialists in Hebrew, 1 in comparative Semitics, 2 in the Mesopotamian languages, and 2 in Egyptian. And in addition, we also will be asking toward the end of this project for either a specialist or specialists in Mayan and in the Mesoamerican languages to participate in the project itself. By that, I think we need to understand that we accept the Mesoamerican hypothesis for the location of the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon project will be completed in either 2 or 3 years in 2012 or 2013. In the meantime, there is a website for looking at the list and looking at a discussion of proper names in the Book of Mormon that will be available through the Maxwell Institute for Religious Scholarship. The website is mi.byu.edu. I say it will be made available. It is not at this current point in time available. It has not been made available yet because there is still some need to deal with receiving and responding to comments that deal with proper names in the Book of Mormon. Once we get that sorted out within a matter of a few weeks, it will be available. I can encourage you to look on a regular basis at the Maxwell Institute website to see whether the proper names project list has been made available. The Book of Mormon names have a variety of origins. Among these, we have proper names that are of Hebrew origin. Fully a third of the books of the proper names that we find in the Book of Mormon are of Hebrew origin. They include such names as Laban and Jacob and Joseph, and one other that I would like to share with you that I would wish to discuss in just a moment is Sam. In addition, the Book of Mormon also contains proper names of other Semitic languages. For example, Laman and Lemuel. Those I suggest are words, proper names of Arabian origin. I will argue for those in just a moment. We continue. In addition, there are proper names that are of Greek or Hellenic origin. An example of those would be Timothy, as well as Laconius, both of which show the influence of Hellenic names and naming before 600 BC, or the possibility of transoceanic contact between the Old and the New World after 600 BC. Either hypothesis is arguable. There are, beyond that, proper names whose origins are otherwise unidentified and are in the Book of Mormon translated because they were either unknown or incomprehensible to the writers of the Book of Mormon. We have, as an example that I will want to discuss in greater detail, the name Iriantum, which is given as many waters. Last of all, among the list of proper names in the Book of Mormon are those names of a Jaredite origin that may either be a Near Eastern or of Afro-Asiatic background, but are quite uncertain in their origin. Among the names that we have of Jaredite origin are such as Coriantumr. And it's also possible, too, that we will find proper names that are of Mesoamerican origin or have undergone Mesoamerican influence, and for that I think it would require adding a specialist in Mayan or Mesoamerican languages to consider the influence on Book of Mormon names. We proceed to a list of the names. I will give you 11, and maybe I will expand it to 12, but don't worry about it. You're not going to be charged extra for it. No additional charge. 3 that we can describe as slam dunks, plus another one after that. Jershon, Alma, and Sariah. They are described as slam dunks because they contain either literary figures or other linguistic elements of Hebrew or Semitic origin that Joseph Smith would not have been aware of at the time that the Book of Mormon was translated. I don't believe that Joseph Smith even became aware of the Hebrew language until he came to Kirtland in the 1830s. We start looking at the Jershon, but before we look at the name Jershon, we ought to become acquainted with the literary figure Paronomasia, which is described as a form of wordplay that uses similar sounding words or words from similar verbal roots or from the same root for literary or rhetorical effect. An example of this we see in 1 Nephi chapter 8, verse 2. I have dreamed a dream, or in other words, I have seen a vision. Just as a matter of interest, the Semitic languages are absolutely mad about paranomasia, or if we choose to focus on a slightly different term, cognate accusatives, they are absolutely wild about it. However, English tends to shy away from it. I have dreamed a dream may need to be recast so as to avoid the cognate accusative, or as I have seen a vision. We continue, we find paranomasia in the word Jershon. Jershon is from the Hebrew word Yarshon, which means a place of inheritance, from the Hebrew root yarash, which means to inherit. So bear in mind that the Hebrew root yarash means to inherit. Yarshon includes an ending that gives a place name, meaning place of inheritance. And don't be, you ought to be aware that the Hebrew Y is equivalent to the English J. Thus, the Hebrew word Yahweh, Lord, or Jehovah, is equal to the English Jehovah. So the Y is equal to the English J. And we not only are aware that Yarshon has the meaning place of inheritance. Yarash means to inherit. But we take a look at some of the verses in the 27th chapter of Alma, verses 22, 24, and 26, where there is a play on this root that means to inherit that is very significant. The first one, this land, Jershon, or Hebrew Yarshon, is a land which we'll give our brethren for an inheritance. So Yarshon, which means place of inheritance, is the land that we'll give to our brethren for an inheritance. Great paranomasia, something that those that were sensitive to the Hebrew language would appreciate, but not something that we English speakers would care about. Anyway, this is the 22nd verse, verse 24. This we will do unto our brethren, that they may inherit. Bear in mind, the root Yarash means to inherit the land Yarshon. And verse 26, we read, they went down unto the land of Jershon, Hebrew Yarshon, place of inheritance, and took possession, which is from the root Yarash, of the land Yarshon. Parenthetically, I ought to note that we proceed on the assumption that the language of the Book of Mormon was Hebrew. Whether or not the script was Hebrew, the language was Hebrew. Where the Book of Mormon speaks of the language of the Egyptians and the learning of the Jews, I'm guessing the language that is talked about is probably script. And we have plenty of examples of Semitic language documents that were written in Egyptian script in the ancient world. So we accept the fact that the Book of Mormon was written in Hebrew by Hebrew speakers, people that understood the language and the literary conceits of Hebrew and appreciated them. Verse 22 of Alma 27, here we, to get further understanding of the land of Jershon. Sorry about that. Jershon itself was the land on the east by the sea. It joins the land Bountiful. It was given to the anti-Nephi Lehites that I will also mention as an inheritance. We continue with that to Alma, first mentioned in Mosiah chapter 17, verse 2. It is, again, from the a Hebrew word, elam. young man or youth. It's comparable to the Arabic ghulam. Trust me, the Hebrew elam is related to the Arabic ghulam. It means a youth, a young man, or a male servant. We continue there. Alma in Mosiah 17:2 is described as one of the priests of King Noah, as a descendant of Nephi, and he is described in Mosiah 17:2 as a young man. It says there was a young man, there was an individual in the group Alma, and he was a young man. Alma itself means young man, and to continue with the word young man simply engages in a paranomasia, which the Hebrew speakers would have appreciated, who believed in the words of Abinadi. We continue with Sariah in Elephantine, in an area south, about 450 miles south of the Delta, in what is today Aswan. There were documents uncovered and studied that were written about by Arthur Cowley in Papyrus 22, mentioning the name Sariah. This particular list gives the name Sariah Barat Hoshea Bar Harmon, which we could understand as Sariah Barat Hoshea Bar Haman, and translate as Sariah, the daughter of Hosea, the son of Harman. Jeffrey Chadwick, who has looked at this particular name, writes about it that the extant final T of Barat assures us that the person was a daughter, not a son. And after the letters bar are supplied, there is only room for one additional letter. The final H of Sariah. Sariah, written either with an A or an E, is attested as a man's name and not as a woman's name in the Bible. However, it does appear in the Elephantine Papyri as a Hebrew woman's name, not as an Aramaic name, but as a Hebrew name for a woman. And we note the interchangeability of men's and women's name in Hebrew. We have, as an example, Aviyah, Abijah, given not only as an Israelite man's name, but also as a woman's name. The mother of Hezekiah was known as Abiyah or Aviyah, which is both the man's and the woman's name. And we ought to bear in mind, too, not only do we find it in Hebrew, but we can see it in the interchangeability of men's and women's names in the Anglo-American tradition. We just think of these names: Aubrey, Dana, Jordan, Kim, Leslie, Madison, Morgan, Robin, Stacy, Tracy. That makes it probable that Sariah was both a man's name and a woman's name in first millennium BC Israelite tradition. We press on to look as, in addition to another Hebrew name that is also Hebrew Israelite in origin, the name Sam. This particular name, Sam, is attested on a bronze ring-mounted seal. So you have a ring. On this ring you have a seal. If you want to sign your name, if you can't read or you're too lazy, you just get it in the stamp the seal down, and you can sign your name that way. It was on a ring-mounted seal dating to the 7th century BC, right around the time of Lehi's departure. This particular form could be pronounced either as a sheen sham or as a lateralized S that could be pronounced like the Welsh double L sound, but was later pronounced as an S sound. But we ought to bear this in mind too. There are dialect variations in the pronunciation of this particular word, sheen mem. The Ephraimites, who were a Joseph tribe that lived to the east of the Jordan River, were, according to the 12th chapter of Judges, unable to pronounce the word with a sheen. They had to pronounce it with a seen. They couldn't pronounce it shibboleth, they pronounced it siboleth instead, suggesting that there were dialect variations, and that among those dialect variations there may be a difference in the pronunciation of the sheen as opposed to the seen sound. We go on to proper names that were Semitic in origin, but not Hebrew. The first one is Laman. A proper name mentioned in a Lehianite inscription. Lehianite was a language spoken and written anciently in the northwest Arabian Peninsula around the middle of the first millennium BC. So it's not inconceivable that it could have been a name that was known to Lehi, or one of Lehi's family, as a result of which the oldest son was given that name. We continue on with the name Lemuel. Lemuel is cited in Proverbs 31:1 as a king of Massa, where we read the words of King Lemuel, the prophecy that his mother taught him. In the interest of time, we will press on. Massa actually is Lemuel is a name that has a very venerable tradition in northwestern Arabian Peninsula, and was pronounced as Lemuel. I want to press on from there. Let me note last of all, Lemuel is a good Arabian name, as Laman was also a venerable Arabian name in the early to mid first millennium BC. The tribe of Massa, where the name Lemuel was given, may also be connected with the Masanoi of the Arabian desert. So it's a desert name in the northwest part of the Arabian Peninsula, probably pronounced, well known, I'm guessing, to Lehi or his family. We continue with proper names that are of Arabian origin. With that, we have Kafnun Peyo Kanapir Kanefi from the Egyptian Nefer or Nufer, which means handsome or beautiful, and came in the late Egyptian period to be pronounced as Nefi. Nefer, Nufer became Nefer, Nefi or Nufi. And two, the name element NPY, though a little strange to us, seems to be a Semitic, not just a Semitic, but a Canaanite transcription of the Egyptian Nefer. Why? Because the middle P in Phoenician or Hebrew or any of the other Canaanite languages would have been pronounced as an F sound. A P becomes a F, a B becomes a V, a K becomes a Ch sound. That's intervocalic spiritization. I've taught you. One of the secrets of Hebrew, I should probably give you credit for a class. Anyway, we continue. Thus, NPY that we transliterate would be pronounced as Nephi. There was no problem in that at all. John Gee, who unfortunately is not with us today, I don't think, writes, one may confidently conclude whether it's from Nefer, meaning handsome or beautiful, or Nefu, that means captain. The name Nephi is an attested Egyptian name. And we continue with that, from that to Anti-Nephi-Lehi, which is a Lamanite personal name or a gentilic for the individual, the brother of Lamoni, as well as the people that were named after this brother of Lamoni. The name Anti is not Indo-European in origin. Rather, it comes from an Egyptian root, NTY, pronounced either neti or enti, take your pick, meaning that one, he of or those of, a partisan or partisans of. Thus, Anti-Nephi-Lehi probably means a partisan of Nephi and Lehi, and I'm guessing that the Anti-Nephi-Lehis probably would have meant partisans of Nephi and Lehi. We continue from there to proper names of unknown and unidentified origin, which required that the translator provide a translation of the meaning of the word because it was unknown to Book of Mormon writers and speakers. My colleague, Paul Hoskisson, has noted that the reason why 3% of the names given in the Book of Mormon are included with their meanings is that the Nephites, whose native spoken language was Hebrew and whose written language or script was Egyptian, I'm guessing it may be Egyptian script, Hebrew language, would have been unable to understand the words, the meanings of these words. He continues, the only rational reason for Nephi to include both the transliteration and the translation is that he did not expect his audience to immediately grasp the meaning of Iriantum, and because it was not a readily recognizable Nephite word. Somebody tells you Iriantum, you say, what? I don't really quite understand what that word means. So we look at it, quite likely the word Iriantum that is given to us as many waters is quite likely South Arabian or South Semitic in origin. We have a root, RWY, with a basic meaning of watering, related to the Hebrew Rabbah, which means to overflow with water, and to another word, RY, to the word pronounced either RY or IRY. In addition to that, you have the suffix an that gives you the sense of a place name, Ryan. And in addition to that, Ryan, which is a place name, a place of flowing. And then we have the root tam, which means whole or complete or abundant. So Arwayan tam or Irwayan tam has this meaning, a place of abundance or rich waters, thus many waters. Arwayan tam. We continue with another word, Nahum. is a place where Ishmael was buried. In fact, we read in 1 Nephi 16:34 that this particular place they didn't call Nahum. It was a place that was called Nahum, probably meaning that they got the name from other people. I am guessing that it is a place name of venerable age in the Arabian Peninsula, and was a sufficiently venerable age that they adopted the name. A German explorer who went to Yemen in the 18th century saw a particular place that whose name he put on the map as Nahum, Nahhm. This was not the first time. The first time was about 20 years before, but this in the 1770s was another example of a place name, Nahm or Nahhm, given to a particular location in Yemen, just a little northwest of Sana'a, which is the present-day capital of Yemen. And beyond that, there are 3 altar inscriptions containing the letters Nhm as a tribal name dating from the 7th to the 6th century BC, roughly the time when Lehi's family would have been traveling through that area. And this particular picture shows the area that is now known as Nahum or Nahum, that contains some of these altars on which inscriptions were written, not necessarily those dating from the 7th to 6th century, but at least showing the altars with the inscriptions. Nhm appears also as a place name and as a tribal name in southwestern Arabia. In the pre-Islamic and early Islamic period, the Arab antiquarian Hamdani writes about these in a couple of his books as being very ancient. And in addition, the Arabist and antiquarian Robert Wilson notes there is minimal movement among tribes over time. It is not inconceivable. The region now known as Nahum may well have had that or a similar name in antiquity. Thus, Nahum probably, that was named in the Book of Mormon, was probably a place name that had went back to hoary antiquity and was borrowed by Lehi and his family. In addition to that, there is another association. The Hebrew word Naham means to groan. The South Arabian word doesn't have a meaning like this, but you can see when the daughters of Ishmael cry out because of the death of their father, we can see the association of Nahum with this Hebrew word Naham, which means to groan. We go on to proper names of Hellenic or Greek origin. And this is, here we get to see what we learned before coming into play about Laconius, who was the chief judge of the Nephites, a prophet and a just man who prepared the Nephites for war against the robbers. This particular name, Laconius, Lachonius, is the masculine form of the hypothetical Greek word Laconios, which means a Spartan or a Laconian. We have some other forms that are attested, like Laconion and Laconia, Laconion in the neuter, Laconia in the feminine. But in addition to that, the fact that you have a CH suggests that you have either a K or a C stop that is undergone in the venerable fashion of Hebrew and the Canaanite dialects of the Semitic languages, intervocalic spirantization. So here we've been able to use spirantization to good purpose. A K in between vowels is spirantized. It becomes a K becomes a Ch sound, and thus we have the CH, probably suggesting spirantization. So the issue the further issue has to do with origins. It is not inconceivable this particular name may have been brought by Lehi and his family early on and just kept within the family until the name was given and written down in the late first century BC, or alternatively, it may be a name that was brought to Book of Mormon lands from the Old World by Greek speakers to the New World, and was borrowed as a result of that kind of contact. Thus, Laconius is a word that has undergone a venerable linguistic transformation that is beautiful, otherwise very well attested in the ancient world. May I note again the website mi.byu.edu that you may wish to visit now and again to find out whether the list of names that is being used and has been entered in to the website is currently available, so that you'd be able to get used to get access to it. Let's note this too. A quotation by Austin Farrer about C.S. Lewis that may become a kind of theme for the apologetic undertaking. Farrer writes about C.S. Lewis, though argument does not create conviction, lack of it destroys belief. What seems to be proved may not be embraced, but what no one shows the ability to defend is quickly abandoned. Rational argument does not create belief, but it maintains a climate in which belief may flourish. In conclusion, not only is the Book of Mormon an ancient document that is true for those that desire to know of its truth, but also in the finest tradition of C.S. Lewis and Austin Farrer as defenders of Christianity, the Book of Mormon is historically and linguistically arguable and defensible. Thank you. The first question, how well does the official pronunciation guide of the Book of Mormon at the back of the Book of Mormon stack up? My colleagues have done, Bob Smith and Paul Oscarson have done better work on that, but I can say that it's probably reflective of the tradition of Latter-day Saint pronunciation. It is not necessarily a good historically representative representation. We go on with this. Comment on Ramyumptum. That is another name that I would love to have shared with you. It is another word which has a translation which means high place. It is a dead ringer, meaning a high place. The word Ram in Hebrew means high, and The others are probably simply suffixal material on all of it. That's one that I would like to see get put on the website so that it could be explained. So stay tuned for that, and not too very long time. Again, the question of the relationship between Hebrew and Reformed Egyptian. Actually, I can't honestly say that there is any particular correlation between what we find in late Egyptian or Demotic and Reformed Egyptian. In fact, Reformed Egyptian seems to be the script that was written at a late period of time in a Book of Mormon history when their text was being written, and not necessarily, not with no necessary connection between that and what we find in Egyptian, in Demotic Egyptian. So we have one more. Some of these you may want to. There's a question about the vocalization. The question has to do with Jershon, with the accent of the first syllable, as opposed to Yarshon, where the accent is on the last syllable. In Hebrew, the accent tends to be on the last syllable. And when I pronounce it in English fashion, I tend to pronounce the next to last syllable. You'll excuse me for that, but recognize that Hebrew has a tradition of pronouncing the word of the last syllable. Some of these others, this is wonderful. Thank you very much. And if you wish to visit with me about it later, you're welcome to do so. But Rami Yomtum, I can promise, will be made available on the website as soon as the website is up, which I hope is very soon. Thanks very much.
Very much.